Think about the Arctic. For pretty much all of human history, right? It was this remote, frozen wasteland at the top of the world. But something's changing. Fast. Suddenly, the Arctic is front and center on the world stage. So how in the world did this giant sheet of ice become one of the hottest geopolitical battlegrounds on the planet? Let's get into it.
Okay, it all kicks off with this number right here, 4 times. The Arctic is warming up a staggering 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. There's a scientific term for this, Arctic amplification. And it's basically this really dangerous feedback loop. Think of it like this. Bright white ice acts like a giant mirror, reflecting the sun's heat back into space. Simple enough, right? But as that ice melts, it reveals the dark ocean underneath. And dark surfaces, well, they soak up heat, which, you guessed it, melts even more ice. It just keeps feeding on itself. And here's what that looks like in the real world. Just take a look at this. On the left, you've got the Arctic back in the 1980s. And on the right, that's what it looks like today. Since the 80s, the amount of sea ice we see at its lowest point in the summer has shrunk by almost 40%. That is huge. I mean, we're literally watching a brand new ocean open up at the top of the world right before our eyes. You know, this quote from Dr. Caroline Kennedy Pipe really just hits the nail on the head. This isn't some distant, isolated problem. The melting ice is a global game changer. It's completely rewriting the rules for everything, for trade, for military strategy, for who holds power. All right, so first up, let's really try to get our heads around the sheer scale of what's happening up there. This isn't just some slow, gradual warming. No, we're talking about a total transformation of a massive part of our planet. And it's all happening within a single human lifetime. It's just staggering. And it's not just about how much area the ice covers. It's the kind of ice that's disappearing. You see, we used to have this really thick, old, permanent ice. They call it multi-year ice. Back in the day, it made up about 30% of the whole ice pack. Today, it's down to just 3%. That ancient, resilient Arctic, it's basically gone. So that brings us to the really big question, right? As this new ocean appears, this new navigable ocean, what does it unlock? What new opportunities and, let's be honest, what new conflicts are about to be unleashed on the world? And that leads us right into the next chapter of this story, the mad dash for new shipping routes and a literal treasure trove of resources. You can think of it as a modern-day gold rush, but this time it's happening at the North Pole. For what, centuries now, global trade has relied on these famous choke points, like the Suez Canal. But check this out. The Northern Sea Route, which runs right along Russia's coast, is now opening up. And taking that route shaves a full week off the trip from Shanghai to Rotterdam. That is a massive saving in time, fuel, and money. It's completely redrawing the map of how goods move around the world. But as big as the shipping routes are, the real prize might just be what's lying under the seafloor. The U.S. National Intelligence Council puts the number at least $1 trillion. That's how much they think the minerals and metals that are about to become accessible are worth. $1 trillion. So what are we talking about here? Well, for starters, the Arctic is thought to hold about 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and a whopping 30% of its natural gas. But the real fight, the thing everyone's getting really intense about right now, is the critical minerals, especially something called rare earth elements. So why all the fuss about these rare earths? Well, they are absolutely essential for, well, pretty much everything in our modern lives. The smartphone in your pocket, the most advanced military jets, they all need them. And here's the kicker. Right now, China basically controls the entire global market. That gives Beijing some serious strategic leverage. But here's the potential game changer. Greenland. It turns out this massive island is sitting on what might be the world's largest untapped deposits of these very same rare earth elements. All of a sudden, Greenland has gone from being this remote, icy island to a crucial strategic prize. The US and its allies are absolutely desperate to find a way to break China's monopoly, and Greenland could be the key. Okay, so let's recap. We've got brand new trade routes opening up, a $1 trillion resource bonanza on the table. The stakes could not be higher. So who are the main players trying to elbow their way to the front of the line in this high-stakes game? Well, it's shaping up to be a tense three-way race for dominance. You could almost call it a new kind of Cold War. Only this time, it's being fought on ice and water. And the main competitors? Russia, the United States, and China. Let's start with Russia.
There's no debating it. Russia is the top dog in the Arctic. They control nearly half of the entire Arctic coastline, and the region is absolutely vital to their economy. We're talking 20% of their entire GDP comes from there, and they back this up with serious hard power. Think a massive fleet of about 40 icebreakers, plus a huge military buildup with around 40 specialized bases. Then you've got the United States, who you might call the awakening giant. For a long time, honestly, the US didn't pay much attention to the Arctic. But now, it is scrambling to catch up. I mean, there's this frankly embarrassing icebreaker gap. The US has 2 heavy icebreakers. Compare that to Russia's 40. So now, Washington's focus is shifting, and shifting fast, to places like Greenland and key naval choke points. The Arctic is officially a top national security priority. And finally, we have China. Now, this one's interesting, because China has 0 Arctic territory. None. But that hasn't stopped them from boldly declaring themselves a near-Arctic state. They've got this huge polar Silk Road plan, they're buddying up with Russia, and they are methodically inserting themselves into the region, building their own icebreakers and pouring money into Arctic projects. So with these 3 major powers all jockeying for control, it brings up a really fundamental question. In a part of the world that is literally being physically rewritten, who gets to make the new rules? Because the old ways of doing things, the old international agreements, they're starting to crack under all this pressure. And that brings us to our final section. What does the future hold? Because with the old rules basically melting away, just like the ice, the decisions that get made in the Arctic over the next few years are going to have massive consequences for the stability of the entire world. Right at the center of this whole mess is something people call the Arctic paradox. It's this deep, troubling irony. The climate change that's making it possible to get to all this oil and gas, it was caused by burning fossil fuels to begin with. So now, the race to pull more fossil fuels out of the ground threatens to speed up the very warming that's making it all possible. It is a truly terrifying feedback loop. So, where does this all lead? Well, experts pretty much see 3 possible futures. First, a tense, managed competition, where everyone's rivals, but they kind of stick to some informal rules. Second, a much scarier fragmentation and confrontation, where the rules completely break down and a crisis could easily spark a real conflict. Or third, a more hopeful path, cooperative reinvention, where the world's nations actually work together to create a brand new way to govern this new ocean. In the end, the Arctic is so much more than just a new arena for geopolitics. It's like a mirror. It shows us, in stark detail, the consequences of choices we've already made about our planet, about our politics. But maybe more importantly, it forces us all to look ahead and confront the really tough choices we still have to make. The question is, what are we going to see when we look in that mirror?